Okay, we'll call the planning commission meeting to order. We'll begin with the pledge to the flag, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jess, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Perkovic.
Here.
Mr. Sidoti.
Here.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Here.
Mr. Varga.
Here.
Mr. Cicero.
Here.
Mr. Snow.
Here. Entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of July 26th.
So moved.
Second.
Jess?
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. We have several public hearings this evening. The format we follow for public hearings is allow the applicant an opportunity to tell us what they want to do at a particular site. Then we open up to anybody else wishing to speak in favor. Then those wishing to speak against are afforded a similar opportunity. So with that in mind, conditional use permit to allow a drive-through facility at 7827 Reynolds Road and 7787 Reynolds. Is that applicant here? Okay, would you come forward and stand at the podium here and identify yourself for the clerk, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Steve Franzak. I'm the Director of Planning at LRC Realty in Akron, Ohio. I'm accompanied by Bob Abramovitz, our Vice President, David Bergvis, our Development Manager, and our Architect, Fred Margulies. I'd like to start by introducing the site. Sure, if I'm upside down here. Property is located at the northeast corner of Reynolds and Tyler Boulevard. It is currently a small 4,000 square foot building that houses, or formerly housed, a home health center and Angelo's Cleaning. I'd like you to, adjacent to us to the north is the Bravo Restaurant. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the site. Taking a close look at this existing condition aerials, please recognize that currently there is a access driveway for this facility here along Reynolds and along Tyler Boulevard. Both of these will be closed. I'd like to describe for this drive-through, just kind of describe the drive-through vehicular procedure. As I just stated, the existing driveway here is closed and the existing driveway here is closed. The Starbucks drive-through traffic will utilize the existing right in, right out site driveway that will now be between Starbucks and Bravo. The full access occurs at Tyler Boulevard, which is an existing access which will remain in place. The vehicle access is fairly simple. If you're traveling north on Reynolds, you enter the site, you get into the drive-through lane, which is a 12-foot wide lane that will accommodate queuing for about 12 to 15 cars. We have an overhead bar for clearance, a pre-menu sign, a electronic order, and the final menu board. Cars stack, they pick up their coffee, they leave the site with a right turn here or a left turn down Tyler and then southbound on Reynolds.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Any comments from the administration?
None at this time.
Okay. Any comments, questions from this commission? So the building is coming down.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the planning, in the site plan review. The building will come down. It's a brand-new Starbucks building.
Okay. Guys, any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sidoti?
just one quick question. On the right in, right out on Reynolds Road there to get into Bravo, when you make that curb cut to come into Starbucks, that utility pole that's right in the middle, are you going to remove that, your contractor, or does CEI have to remove that?
as far as the detailed engineering plans, the pole is not in the way.
It's not?
You're talking about the electric power pole?
Yeah,
No.
it looked like it was right in the middle.
It is not. And we can look at the civil plans a little bit in greater detail, but as far as we know, it's not in the way.
All right.
The pole and the arm end is going to remain in its present location.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. One at all.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Just when you're ready.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes,
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes. That was one of the easier ones you'll ever have, right?
It was nice.
Okay, now we'll go to the second public hearing, which is outdoor dining.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
The outdoor patio, I don't know, I'm sure if you guys can zoom on this. It's on the front of the building. It will include approximately 8 tables, 20 chairs, 4 umbrellas. That may differ, but it also includes a decorative fence along the front of the patio, and protective bollards will be placed along with that decorative fence.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Kathy, anything from the administration?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman, other than the conditions already noted.
And you've seen the conditions, you agree to the conditions?
We agree to the conditions, yes.
Commissioners, any questions for the applicant or the administration?
I have a question or maybe a request. The bollards, could we see something a little more decorative than just a steel pipe?
Yeah, we don't want to look like we're tying off freighters.
We certainly can, and we've had some discussion with Starbucks on that. We will detail that out in greater detail, probably during the course of the final plans or during the course of the building permit. But yes, I agree. They won't be your steel safety yellow.
Right.
They will be something
Something
to
that works with the fence that you're putting up.
be architecturally harmonious with the fence, yes. sir.
And you gave a number of seats in the patio? How many?
The number of seats is around 20.
Okay, well, I'm looking at your plan, it only shows 14 seats. That's why I'm wondering where the other 6 seats are going.
I'll just break them down. This is an umbrella with a table with 2 seats underneath it. Same thing here, 2 seats underneath that, that's 4. There's 4 seats at this table, that's 8. There's 4 seats at that table, that's 12. There's 4 seats at that table, that's 16. And there's 4 seats at this table, that's 20.
Oh, that plan is different than this plan. That's what I'm just looking at the drawing we got. It shows,
Are you looking at the floor plan?
Yes.
Probably the floor plan.
yes, so it's different, so it's,
It's a little
go by this. Okay.
I think
Sorry.
the maximum is going to be 8 tables,
I
20
just wanted,
seats.
I just wanted a clarification, that's all. Okay.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion with the 3 conditions noted. Second?
Just when you're ready.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
yes,
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes,
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes. We'll see you a little bit later
Thank
with the
you.
preliminary. Tell them what a rough time you had, will you? Tell everybody what a rough time you had. Here. I mean,
I'll tell it, it's
Okay.
really tough.
okay. Conditional use permit to allow restaurant Dunkin' Donuts at 5834 Heisley Road. Could you identify yourself or the clerk, please?
My name is Scott Aurelia. I'm the attorney for Bhavesh Patel, the proposed developer on the site with Weston Hurd Law Firm. Along with me this evening is Bhavesh Patel, the proposed purchaser of the site, developer Jennifer Hunter, who is the developer's architect from DS Architecture, and Mr. Randy Viviani, who is the representative of the property owner, the Viviani Family Partnership.
Okay, and the reason we have a conditional use permit for this is it's a conditional use permit in the MIP section, is that correct?
Correct for restaurant.
Okay. Go right ahead.
Sure. We are at 5834 Heisley Road. We are proposing the construction of a Dunkin' Donuts coffee shop, donut shop, along with a drive-through facility. Mr. Bhavesh Patel would be the proposed developer and the owner-operator of the Dunkin' Donuts facility. Mr. Patel owns several other Dunkin' Donuts in the Cleveland market. Specifically, he has 10 other franchises. This would be his 11th franchise. He's a very established, very seasoned franchise operator. The facility that we are proposing is 2,050 square feet. We're proposing 30 parking spaces with 2 handicap spots and a drive-through lane, which would be 22 feet wide, and includes a bypass lane. Access to this site would be from Progress Parkway. That would be the primary access to the site, and there would also be curb cuts and access to Heisley Road. That would be a right-in, right-out only access to the site. The facility would not have any exterior patios or exterior seating. I believe the conditional use permit is primarily for the purpose of operating the drive-through, which the MIP was recently modified to permit.
Right. Okay, so we've got the drive-through coming up as the next item on the agenda. So this, at this time, is just for the use of Dunkin' Donuts, for the facility use.
I believe it's for the drive-through as well.
Oh, that's the next item on the
Second
agenda.
Oh, okay. Yes, then it's just for the restaurant facility,
Okay.
yes, sir.
So anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against? If you'd come forward, and Tony, and identify yourself for the clerk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I'm Tony Bertone. I'm representing Steris Corporation. I do believe Steris Corporation sent a letter back to the city council and planning commission expressing their dissent or dissatisfaction with this proposed plan. I do have an image here. I don't know if you can look in at that, but I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at that letter, but Steris is opposed to this plan because this being the site here, and this is Steris's main corporate campus. The Heisley district, as you know, has been set up for businesses and like uses. This business would impact that corner. There's no traffic light there. There's been a traffic light that was established for Steris Way, which was placed in a position that would allow businesses such as Dunkin' Donut to maybe populate the opposite side of the street or have access in the future to Diamond Center where businesses like that are allowed to operate. The problem they have with this is you all know how the traffic flows down Heisley, and no matter what type of traffic control you try to place at this type of establishment with a right turn out, you're going to constantly have to have some sort of cruiser to sit there to make sure that folks do that. Otherwise, they're going to head down Progress Parkway where they enter the site. They're eventually going to figure out that at the end of that cul-de-sac is Steris's back entrance, and then they'll drive through that site and use one of their 2 traffic lights to exit. Steris Corporation has almost 1,000 people on that site. They use it, it's a pedestrian campus. There's a lot of walking throughout there. There's, they have a fitness center. There's folks on site at all times, all through the year, jogging, using that site for that business's purpose. They are your largest employer, largest taxpayer. They do a lot to support the city, as you do with them, but they do feel that this would be detrimental to their site and the safety of their employees. So they are strongly opposed. They don't have an issue with Dunkin' Donuts. If they can find a better place, on this corridor that would be more appropriate, they would certainly support that. They would support it at Diamond Center, but they would have a hard time supporting it here.
Okay.
So thank you for
Tom.
allowing me to
Thanks.
speak.
Anyone else wishing to speak against? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Comments from the administration?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Commissioners, questions for the applicant or the administration?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sidoti?
in addition to Steris, wasn't there another written objection
Yes.
submitted? I think we should Note that for the record.
Okay. Jess, do you have that correspondence?
Yes.
Yes. Would you read it?
The whole thing?
Well, I think so. I think it's appropriate.
Okay. Regarding the conditional use permit for Dunkin' Donuts at 5834 Heisley Road, I own the building at 9350 Progress Parkway, and I'm concerned that allowing a drive-through facility at that location will only increase a traffic problem at the corner. It is difficult and hazardous now to exit or enter Progress Parkway without adding additional traffic from a drive-through facility. Unless Dunkin' Donuts wants to install a traffic light at the intersection, my feeling is that it would be hazardous. It would be a hazardous condition at that corner.
Okay, thank you. So you've got 2 negatives on this. Any response to those negative comments?
Jennifer, I'm going to, I guess, turn the floor over to the
Okay.
architect to maybe address some of the traffic
Sure.
flow issues.
If you'd identify yourself for the clerk, please.
My name is Jennifer Hunter with DS Architecture.
Okay,
We've been the architect in this region for Dunkin' for almost 30 years now. We've done hundreds of Dunkin' locations. I'm not a traffic engineer, but we can't predict where people are going to go and how they're going to drive. We have found that people take the shortest path to their coffee in the morning. And so we feel very strongly that Progress will be used more prominently than Steris would be. They are 2 separately named roads, so unless you're familiar with that back culvert, you wouldn't know that they connect. And we feel that that Steris won't be negatively impacted by the traffic.
let me ask you a question. At some point, I'm sure you've gotten projections from Dunkin' Donuts on traffic count for a drive-through. Now, I realize I'm jumping ahead a little bit because the drive-through is coming up next. But do you have any kind of traffic projections for a drive-through?
I would let Bobby speak to that as the operator. He's more, those numbers change and are more on the operations side.
Bobby Patel, franchisee. It varies from location to location. We have location they do 40% drive-through, and we have location they do 70% drive-through. So
So what's the anticipation for this one?
we're thinking more 50, 55 drive-through.
Okay. And do you have a number associated with that? What's that translate into in terms of vehicular traffic?
Many cars, I would say around 400 cars
Okay,
in all day.
go right ahead.
Mr. Snow, the TMS engineers provided a trip generation analysis that the city engineer's office did evaluate. They indicated that total new trips during the weekday peak hours in the AM would be 217, and weekday peak hour in the PM would be 106
Okay.
new trips.
So that's where your numbers are coming from?
Close to it, yes.
Close to it. Okay. Anything else, commissioners, that you want to ask of the administration or the applicant?
Well, can I ask a question?
Sure.
When you purchased this property, were you aware that, what were your intentions when you purchased it? Was your intention to?
We haven't bought it yet. It's contingent upon approval.
I see, okay. But you were aware within this contingent relationship that you'd need to get this approval
Absolutely.
in order to buy it? Okay, that answers my question.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go right ahead.
on the picture that you're showing here, it does look to me like you're showing a left turn on the Heisley, on the exit.
These plans do depict a left turn onto Heisley. However, I believe in our application process, it was indicated to us that a right turn, right in, right out would be path, and we are agreeable to the right in, right out.
Okay.
You are correct in noting.
Okay, I think we have Tony, do you have another question?
Yeah, just to follow up.
Go right ahead.
Sort of to rebut the comment that Progress Parkway is a back door, and, you know, it is their main entrance. And everybody in Mentor, most people in Lake County are quite aware of Steris Corporation. It's a very large employer. It really helps, it's a big part of Lake County. Everybody knows that they're located on Progress Parkway. One of their buildings actually has an address of Progress Parkway. So 200 cars, 400 cars, whatever the trip generation says, that's 200 opportunities for those cars to make their way back onto that site. There was a pedestrian death on that site within the last 2 years. Somebody was jogging through there and motor vehicle hit them at that site because of poor visibility with the traffic and how close that corner is to the Steris entrance. We really do feel that this is an unsafe situation. Nobody's approached Steris about this until a few days ago when that letter was sent to them. I do believe they called in to Council President to ask to at least have this tabled so this can be looked at. So we're very hopeful that you'll really consider
Okay.
what we have to say.
Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Tony. Mr. Zeman, I'm going to put you on the spot. The reason we have a CUP in this location is, could you go through the definitions of why we have a CUP? Is it in harmony with the surrounding area and all that?
Sure.
I'll give you a second to get your legal books open.
113504, after the public hearing is conducted, the commission has to consider whether the proposed use will be in harmony with or adversely affect the use of neighboring properties. Secondly, whether it will adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhood. Will it change the character of the neighborhood? Will it be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property? Fifth, is it in accord with the purpose and intent of this chapter, meaning the zoning code, and the comprehensive plan of the city? And finally, whether it complies with any adopted policies related to the specific use.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Commissioners, any questions for the legal department, or for the administration, or for the applicant? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Or do you need more information? If you need more information, we can table this and get more information.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sidoti.
it was revealed tonight that Steris really learned about this in a short period of time, and there was no real time to prepare for this meeting in order to come forward with a full presentation. Because Steris is a large and very important employer in the city of Mentor, I'd be willing to table this and allow Steris the opportunity to meet with our officials in our planning department and at least talk it through and see, what the issues are that can be put on the table and make
Okay.
another presentation.
Now, let me ask you one more question. Coming from the applicant's standpoint, is there more information you'd like to see from the applicant?
Not really, Mr. Chairman. I want to see more on this issue of safety
Okay,
and the congestion that two property owners are saying this is going to cause. And then hearing the one fact that there was a pedestrian death, I'd like to hear more from the occupants in that area
okay.
to see, what all the concerns may be. Are we missing something? Is there something that can be addressed to make it a little safer? Maybe, there should be a little time to discuss this further. I'm giving Steris some extra time, and maybe even the other gentleman who sent the letter can join in.
Okay,
Maybe there needs to be a discussion.
so there's a motion to table. Is there
Motion
a
to
second?
table.
I'll second.
Okay, would you Jess, call the roll, please?
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
No.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes. I like to evaluate the traffic impact of the area. I mean, if we can have some further discussion relative to that, I'd like to see that. Because I know what Heisey is like. throughout the day. I know what Heisley's like at the intersection of Progress. You know, I'm not questioning what the traffic study showed, but there's an awful lot of traffic there. And I just wonder, you're gonna have people that are, you know, there's a right-in, right-out. You're gonna have people that are not gonna do the right-in, right-out. They're gonna turn left out of that location, because we see it all over where we have pork chops. So,
Okay,
okay,
understood.
okay. Thanks. I want,
Address the drive-through separate, is that
I
tabled as
think
well?
I think we'll keep that on the table, or motion to put it on the table. Mr. Sedoti, you want to do that?
Yes, motion to table that also.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sedoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes?
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes. Okay, we'll table that. And I think when we get to the site plan, preliminary site plan, we'll table that as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Okay, that's done.
Conditional use permit to allow a tent or similar temporary structures or retail activities to 6961 Center Street.
Kurt Hansen from Tally CM, representing Classic Mazda. Classic would like to construct from starting next week after we get a permit into the 1st of December to put a 20 by 40 temporary tent structure up where we have our temporary trailers at right now during construction. The tent would be used primarily for having new car delivery underneath it, and also too, if the weather's bad, to be able to put other cars underneath so people can come and look at them. Because obviously right now, with having the whole main showroom of the under construction, obviously has limits to where cars can get delivered at, and also be able to look at it as well. The tent would all be white, and then have drop-down curtains on the two sides and on the back side as well to help to keep.
So the drawing that we're looking at has the locations on it, right?
Yeah, correct.
So
Yeah, this
those
is-
are standing and where they are.
Yeah, because right now, this is our current trailers that are up there. That is the double wide trailer we're using for sales. We have a ADA accessible restroom trailer now, and then we have our service and customer lounge trailer here, so it'll be within the same vicinity.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Kathy, anything from the administration?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioners, questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. This is going into the end of the year?
Right now, we're basically proposing to have it go to about December 3rd, which is about the same time that our trailers go to.
Okay, my concern, or maybe you can address my concern, is when we get our traditional 2 feet of snow, is this tent going to be rated for that kind of weather?
Yeah, we're right now looking at getting it through Sun Rentals. They'll come out weekly to check it, especially when the weather starts getting bad with heavier rains and then snow. And also, too, Aussie Classic has their maintenance staff that takes care of all their snow plowing. We'll obviously be over there as well, keep watch on it. If we know it looks like we're just going to start getting into November with a lot of snowstorms coming, we will obviously at that point call and get the tent removed.
Okay, so you won't attempt to keep it up
No,
once
no.
the weather turns?
No,
Okay.
we know like one snow or something like that light thing, but if we see major snowstorms, it's going to be taken out of there.
Okay, well, because it's in a public area, it would be something you'd have to be Johnny on the spot if it was going to be 6 inches of snow. That tent won't take
It's
it.
obviously public, also do have fact if we have cars underneath, it's obviously a safety thing too for cars and damaging vehicles, so.
That would be a condition, I think, to this, that it would be weather permitting.
You want to add that?
Yes, I want to add that as a condition,
What is the
that the
condition?
tent can be up, weather permitting, and put in parentheses, snow.
That's kind of right now, we have till December 3rd, 'cause we're hoping usually through November, beginning of December, most times it's fairly good weather, so we figure come after that, it's,
So let me ask you this, are you on schedule for the construction?
so far we are.
Okay, good. Okay, any other questions, commissioners?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sedoti?
When is Mr. Brown's projection to begin demolition of the former Great Lakes Bank building?
That's actually already underneath demolition right now.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Good.
It's been for probably going on almost 2 weeks. They've been inside doing demolition, get the inside cleared out first.
Oh, okay.
And then that's why right now you don't see much going on. The inside's pretty well, they've been in there, it's pretty well gutted, and then they'll start here within the week, and you'll see the rest of the building come down.
Is there a lot of asbestos inside that building?
Actually, no, there wasn't. We'd had a report done, I think, prior to spinning in for a demo permit, so it was all, came back was clean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other questions? Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with 3 conditions?
I'll second.
Just when you're ready.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes. Okay. Conditional use permit to allow a modification of the required buffer adjacent to R2 single-family residential at 7850 Minner Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Bill Butts, and I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates. We're the civil engineer on the project. Here this evening to talk to you primarily, at this point at least, about the buffer on the rear side of what is currently the former Office Max property there. We are looking at bringing in a new tenant to replace that building from, I think, the 60s or 70s. I think that's a Hobby Lobby that's pretty well known. And as a part of that, staff brought up the 50-foot buffer yard requirement that's behind the property. So in looking at this with staff, there were a couple of things that we looked at, primarily the existing trees that are at the back of the property. I don't know if anyone is familiar with that, but I've got a few pictures I can show. There are huge trees back there, 40 feet tall, 30, 40 feet tall. So our plan is to keep those trees at an 8-foot fence along the back and add a few infill trees accordingly just to fill in the gaps. The fence is going to match what's at the Atlas Theater to the north, and I'm not sure, I've got a couple of renderings here to show you kind of what the before and after would look like as well. This here is kind of the existing view. That's from the neighbor's front yard towards, you can see the existing building in there. That is going to come down. For reference, that's an existing 6-foot tall chain link fence. And then this is what it would look like. You can see the couple of infill trees where, again, there's space in between those existing trees, and you can see the fence almost makes most of the building disappear with the existing tree canopies. We do have a letter of support from our neighbor directly next door. She has stated that she is in full support of it. She's actually been a neighbor, I understand, for a number of years, and actually helps keep that area clean and kind of supports the mall's maintenance staff as well. So I do have a couple of pictures of those trees just to kind of show you. This is a view right directly behind that existing Office Max. Again, you can barely see actually the house in there. And these trees are way taller than that.
Let me interrupt you there. Those
yes.
are basically deciduous trees, though, correct?
Correct.
So
Those are.
in the winter, the leaves will be gone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and so what we're putting to infill is going to be the evergreen type trees. And then that is a look kind of more towards the Atlas parking lot, which is kind of out of the picture here. And then we do have one that's kind of facing south, which is closer to Johnny Cake Road, which apologize for the darkness. It was a cloudy day.
You didn't want to show the chuck holes, right?
We're going to clean all that up. Okay. So that'll be in the site petition. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone against? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Any comments from the administration?
Mr. Chairman, we had our landscape architect, John McFarland, go out and take a look at the existing conditions of the vegetation that is out there presently. And he indicated that while, yes, he's in agreement, the mature trees are certainly helpful. He feels that additional vegetation, new vegetation, more than the 5 trees proposed would be warranted to adequately buffer that. He wasn't as concerned with the width or in front of the fence as much as filling in some of the gaps that are presently there. Again, more so than the 5 trees that have been proposed.
Okay. So you can go more than the 5 trees, right?
Oh, absolutely. We'd be happy to work with staff and John, and if he wants to put in 10 or even 12, whatever. We tried to keep them away from the existing trees because trees will they'll kill each other once they get too big. So we'd be happy to work with staff and John to add, I mean, if we need to commit to up to 5 or 10 more trees, you guys can pick that number.
Okay. Commissioners, questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Why do we need this?
Why do we need this?
Why do we need this reduction in the buffer?
Well, it's an existing condition, and frankly, if we were to put in a 50-foot buffer in the back, Hobby Lobby could not go at this location.
And you say it's an existing condition. What do you mean?
Yeah, so the existing edge of pavement is not changing along, let's see, too many pieces of paper.
But this also includes the location of the building, right?
The buffer yard is the first 50 feet from the property line
Correct.
to the, the
Building.
first 50 feet.
To the
So
building.
The building is further than 50 feet from the property.
Is that true?
I believe so.
It looks closer than the existing building.
Let's see. Let me get through to the right page here. What it's showing, here's a blown up site plan, I don't know that we can read these numbers. The distance from the edge of the building to the edge of the paving is 43.7 feet. And then there's an additional, I'm gonna say, is it 15 to 18 feet to the property line, which is actually where my pen's at.
Is that what it should? Okay, if that's,
There's the 50 foot, and I apologize, it's not drawn on here, I'm gonna do this. The 50 foot is about in here. And I can't draw a straight line to save my
18.
life, but
All right.
that's 40.
so
basically
fine, so,
44.
well, that's good. I was under the impression that you were closer than the 50
Oh, no,
foot.
sir. Thank you
So
for the question. Good clarification.
that's a clarification then.
Very much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, anything else? Staff, anything else?
No, sir.
No, okay.
Can I have a clarification?
Sure.
The staff said about the parking that was shown in the back, that we're setting that aside, we're not putting that parking in?
Well, we had made the recommendation that, to consider removing the back row of parking spaces. And when we spoke to the applicant, they indicated there were some constraints with removing those spaces, in part because of the, was it the storm and sanitary that were there?
Yeah, so the red line is the property line. The blue area is an existing water main easement. The green area is an existing sanitary sewer easement. So if we were to take out those parking spaces and get a little closer to the building with green space, the utilities are going to keep us from planting trees or anything worthwhile, frankly, in that area. If we need to, and we did talk to staff about maybe coming a little bit further to the north and taking out maybe 3 or 4 parking spaces towards Johnny Cake, so that at least from the public right-of-way, that area is screened and covered up a little bit. We could do
Yeah,
that.
that's really covered under the site plan approval.
Correct.
But I just want to get a clarification about why we're doing some of this and what we're going to get left with if we allow this to happen.
Understand.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. This is for the reduction of the buffer, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sidoti?
Ms. Mitchell, the first condition is that the 27 parking spaces along the east property line shall be land banked. But I'm hearing that that's not gonna happen, correct?
Correct, so that condition you would want to modify that or remove it.
Should we remove it? Why don't we just remove it? Is that okay with you, Mr. Sidoti?
Sure.
Okay.
Motion to approve with one condition and an understanding that some additional foliage will be planted near the Johnny Cake Ridge side in order to provide a little more screening there.
Now, you'll meet with staff on that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's fine. One condition.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jess, when you're ready.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich? Yes. Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 7, rezoning of 10 of .19 acres from B2 to R2 at 8619 Menor Avenue.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm a pinch hitter tonight.
Not back from vacation yet?
Well, he's out of town on business. He's actually in the air. He may be in Cleveland in the airport, but he wasn't going to be here. So he asked if I could represent him along with Mr. Pecoraro, if that's okay. So for the record, Tony Bertone and Mr. Rick Osborne Jr.
And Jim Pecoraro, with Land Design Consultants.
Go right ahead.
So I'll let Jim get into the site, but Rick has been working with the staff, and he understands the review. He has no issues with any of the stipulations. And with that, Mr. Pecoraro?
Oops. What we're trying to do, or what Rick is trying to do, is make the existing house or the building a little bit more usable than what it is. As you can see, the building takes up the majority of that lot. There's no room for parking. There's no room for anything but the building. And that was a condition. And what he wanted to do was add more to the back so that you could get past the building and either put a garage or just somewhere to get off the road. But that entails going into the different zoning.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone against? Come up and identify yourself for the clerk, please.
Yeah, my name is Mike Fraser, and I live right there. So I'm basically right across the street from this. And I'm not against putting the new house up, but this surveyor's plat that I looked at, it completely ignores 7357 Maple Street.
Okay.
That property is, for those of us that have lived here a long time, it's called the Carpenters Union Hall.
Right.
It's an empty, vacant building. It's been empty for a long time, and I don't see anything happening or being addressed with that. So I'm kind of confused about, you're going to have a brand-new house there and this old, empty, vacant building just sitting there doing nothing.
Okay.
So,
Well, we're not going to get into the debate right here, but
but
we'll
that's
answer,
my concern.
we'll answer your question before we leave.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it.
May I, that building I show is the Carpenters Union building.
Right.
The house that they want to, would be on the pink shade above that. It doesn't show a house here.
Yes.
But the idea is to get land behind that building so that they could get off of the street. There's really nowhere to park, especially if there's a house here. You don't see what I'm saying? There's no backyard to it. So all it was to add land behind that building.
Okay.
Anyone else wishing to speak against? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Any comments from the administration?
Just maybe a little clarification, relative to parking, where it was a little confusing relative to an additional area for parking in support of the existing former Carpenters Union Hall.
Mr. Pecoraro, if you could answer that question.
I'm sorry, I was fiddling. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, there's been, I think, 2 references to additional parking behind the former Carpenters Union Hall.
Yeah, the area south of the pink that includes the crosshatch would be part of the Carpenter Union building. I was just hatching that part of it was because that's the part that needs to be rezoned.
But it's being rezoned to residential.
I'm sorry?
The proposal is to rezone that to residential.
Yes.
All right. So how do you? That's where the issue of parking kind of got a little confusing, I think, for us.
I think if I could
Go right ahead.
clarify, if it's my understanding is correct, is that the intent is that second lot, which will be part of the next discussion, will be intended for sale as well for residential use?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that answer your question,
Just,
Mr.
just,
Zeman?
just so it's clear that, you know, if it's rezoned residential, it's not going to support the non-conforming commercial use of the former Carpenters Union Hall.
What was Rick's intent with that building?
To allow it to operate the way it is now, as far as I
It's-
understand. Try to get further clarification from him.
Okay.
Why rezone it from business to residential?
That's a good question.
It's already residential.
The area where the Carpenters Union Hall is sited is currently residential, that's
Yes.
true.
The crosshatch behind it is part of the lot that fronts on Menor Avenue.
Correct.
That's all B2. So that
Correct.
back part that we would cut off of the frontage lot would have to be rezoned to residential to match the front of it.
Yes, I understand you want a single lot, single consolidated lot after the split, which would be completely residential, but it sounds like the goal is to continue to use that new lot for commercial purposes. So why not just, that's, now we'd have a commercial parking lot addition in a new residentially zoned. We're increasing the nonconformity of that lot. Why not just have that lot zoned for, you know, general business, for example?
Mr. Pagarero?
Um,
Why don't we table this until Mr. Osborne gets his feet on the ground?
Because it was presented at the last meeting by Mr. Davis that the purpose of this would be to demo the former Carpenters Union Hall and construct
I
another
verify that
single-family
that's right.
residence on that
To
second
build
lot.
another house. That was the idea, to build another house.
Correct, and I spoke to Mr. Osborne as well. I actually even spoke to him today, and his marketing materials are in support of a residential use for that lot. And it was my understanding that
so they want to use
it was my understanding that second lot was to be used for a residential use.
Combined with sublot 2.
Correct.
It's like Mr. Osborne knows you're talking about him because he just texted us and said that the Carpenters Union would go residential. I don't know how he knows we're president.
Residential use.
Yes.
Does he have lottery numbers for us?
Good question.
Okay.
Should we say hi to Mr. Osborne?
Mr. Zeman, what additional thoughts do you have?
It's the Carpenters Union Hall is it's obviously a non-conforming structure. A business use in there is likely non-conforming as well. I don't have the exact numbers as to how long the facility has sat vacant.
Right.
So what we would, so again, it adding to that nonconformity has a lot of unintended consequences. Again, the initial representation was by doing this split, rezoning, split, and then subsequent consolidation, it would create two buildable residential lots. The implication being the Carpenters Union Hall was going to come down.
Is that your understanding?
His intent is that would be a residential use, not a business, not a non-conforming business
So
use.
can we tie a condition to the rezoning?
I don't see any other way to do it. It's just concerning that.
We haven't got the discussion part yet. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Well, there's one thing you said that I'm confused by, okay? I remember the last meeting that said that we were going to create, at the end of this process, two buildable residential lots. Why do we need parking behind at the back part of this second lot?
I don't mean parking per se as like parking for a store or an office, but there is no room to park a car or two cars on that lot as it exists.
Well, you also don't have a house on that lot.
Convert that building to a house.
Is that the intention?
Yes,
Yeah.
To convert into a single unit?
yes.
That's the only thing that's
Residential use.
permitted.
It's the only thing that's permitted, yeah. I'm trying to get through
Right.
and see where we're coming out on the other side.
Yes.
So the intention is to, let me summarize. The intention is to create a single lot composed of sublot 2 in the area to be rezoned to be R2, and that it will be now it will be residential, and that the intention is to renovate the existing structure to a single unit,
Yes,
single residential unit.
yes.
That's the proposal on the table. I don't know if it's practical. I never thought of it that way. I thought they were going to tear it down.
Anything else?
Yes, sir.
Well, let me just follow this. With the existing placement of that building, does that meet the requirements, side yard, front yard, backyard requirements of R2 for residential development?
Probably not, because it sits right on top of the right-of-way.
So it's not in conforming again, it's not
Still
non-conforming.
non-conforming, yes.
But by adding the back portion of land to that current zoning, you are moving that parcel and property into a conforming direction.
Yeah.
You're making it more conforming than it is.
And also as a byproduct of this, we now have a R2, B2 separate line separating these parcels, the parcels on Menor Avenue, which now are required to have a 50-foot buffer between them. Now, that's not your property, but you're imposing this on these other, no, you're shaking your head no.
It's not a 50-foot buffer. It's actually 25, right?
20 to 25 foot, depending on the use.
So one of the conditions of that we had expressed was,
So we're not, I'm sorry to cut you, so we're not creating more non-conforming situations on the business side?
no,
Okay. All right, thank you. You answered my question. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
there's a lot of, this is obviously a completely different approach than what was previously represented. If the applicant has a desire to turn the old Carpenter's, Union Hall into a residence, obviously there's a lot of variables with that. I don't think the administration has had and if that is what's driving this rezoning request, I don't think the administration has had a chance to run that through the various departments. Certainly, I've got some legal issues because we have a non-conforming structure, and I would prefer that we have an agreement on if ultimately the rezoning were approved. I would prefer that we would have an agreement, and if that's the applicant's intent, I would certainly like to see that memorialized much better prior to any potential approval of a rezoning. So that we don't run into odd complications, having a non-conforming commercial structure on a much larger residential parcel under the representation, but not a solidified legal agreement that it will ultimately never be used again for commercial purposes.
Okay. So your recommendation would be to table it?
Table it, yes.
Mr. Chairman, the council would still have to vote on the zoning change, so could we move forward with the understanding that that information would have to be given prior to the council meeting so that those same departments could make their recommendation and then council could make that final determination?
Well, it's still within our purview to make the determination, so I wouldn't want to give that up.
Understand.
Okay. So there's a motion to table.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to table.
Okay.
Second.
Just when you're ready.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes.
Thank you.
Under old business, we're going to tackle this one now? Or does that stay tabled?
I think it should stay. Recommend it stay on the table. The rezoning certainly informs what the commission may do with this proposal.
Okay. Under new business, preliminary site plan of a commercial building, Hobby Lobby at 7850 Menor Avenue. Well, you must have got your paperwork in on time, huh?
Apparently.
Far down the agenda.
We try to be on time. Good evening again, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Bill Butts with Kimley Horn and Associates. We are the civil engineer on the project, requesting preliminary site plan approval for the pad plans for the proposed Hobby Lobby. As you all, I think, are aware, the Hobby Lobby building will come in later as a part of the final site plan approval package. And as mentioned previously with the buffer, we will work with staff to add a couple of trees along our buffer there against our neighbor. At this time, be interested to get any comments or questions you may have on this one. Try to keep it short.
Anything from the administration?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman, other than the comments on the site plan conditions noted.
Okay, and you've read those?
Yes.
And you're in agreement with those?
I believe so, yes.
And you're in agreement with those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I don't have them memorized, unfortunately. But.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I understand this is site plan, preliminary site plan approval, but we do have elevations of the building as relative to how the building imposes itself or, sits on the property and what your plans are with that. Some of the, I don't want to get too far off the site plan reality, but one of the things that I found kind of disconcerting was that the entrance of the building, which is expressed with a bump out on the west side of the building, faces probably about 30% of the parking, maybe a third of the parking. And 2/3 of the parking are south of this location with a building that has no entrance on that side of the building at all. I just find that very awkward. Even the existing building that's there now that's coming down has the entrance at the corner to try to acknowledge an entrance to the people who have to park on the south side. The majority of the people, the majority of the parking. The only reason I bring this up is this is a building configuration thing that has to do with the site plan. The building itself appears to be kind of a generic solution building, probably based on a prototype. I'm not sure that the shape or the location of the type of building relative to the site plan is very responsive to this location. So even though the site plan seems to be usable, doable, the building seems to be less so. And my thought is that if we try to address some of the, what I might call shortcomings of the building, we may be affecting the site plan. So I'm open for the city to have comment on this, or any of my other colleagues here, is that as the building is portrayed, I don't think we could approve this building relative to the finishes, the expression, the nature of it, its orientation to the site and to the main road that runs by. It's very non-responsive to its location. So I don't know how that, I want to see what everyone else thinks about this. That's my opinion.
Any comments from the administration?
Mr. Chairman, we did indicate comments. I didn't put them as conditions because we're still in the preliminary stage, but we did make recommendations on the second page of the analysis, specifically, I can read these, that the administration recommends the proposed building be similar in design to the other new buildings and additions to the mall, which have already incorporated either brick or cement masonry units as the main building material. The preliminary building elevations also lack any other articulation or embellishments besides the front entrance. The north and south elevation should include additional articulation to break up the long, expansive walls. And then we go into the screening of the rooftop. So we made some recommendations in that analysis.
And those comments are along the lines of my comments. I'm embellishing that with some of my own observations.
So you have a little work to do between now and the final.
Sure. So if I may, just address some of the concerns. When we laid this building out, there are a couple of things, and obviously we just spoke to the 50-foot buffer in the back. There were a few things that kind of forced, frankly, the location of this building, whether it be cross parking easements, utility easements, those sorts of things. So completely understand the fact that there aren't as many parking spaces as anybody would really like in the front. That is one of the reasons for the really wide sidewalk along the face of the building, to help provide that safe place for people to come to the entry. We have passed on the staff's comments and administration's comments on the building to the tenant, so that when they do come back, they'll understand the screenings and the brick comments and those sorts of things. So, but from a site layout configuration standpoint, the tenant's comfortable that this will work. I know the mall's looked at it and they're comfortable that it will work. We can definitely talk to them about where that door is, and again, as you referenced, I'm sure it'll come up in final site plan approval. But that was one of the reasons for the, I'll call it the extra large sidewalk out in front, is to help, we don't want people cutting through the parking lot to get there. We want to give them a safe space as soon as we can.
Well, and everyone knows who lives around here that the entrance to the general mall, there's that little entrance in the corner, and a great deal of traffic passes through there. Passes right next to your building, and the majority of your parking is on the other side of that driveway entry. People come in that way and they exit that way in large numbers to avoid the main entrance on the south side. Had you thought about moving the entrance to the south side, being that it's the one you see from the street? Johnny Cake goes right past there. That's what people will see here of this building?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't speak to the architecture of the building. What we included is what we had at the time, and I don't believe Hobby Lobby's done any specifics on where their official doors are on this site.
I only bring it up relative to the approval of a site plan.
I appreciate that.
That if the building needs to change, if we, like I said, we go back to the existing building that's on the site now, they move their entrance literally at a 45-degree angle at the corner, and have windows, glazing, and architectural details on the south side. And right now, this building and the way it's positioned, as you drive up on Johnny Cake, you can look right up the back of the building and see all the equipment on the roof, which would not be acceptable.
Yeah, we're confident that the screening on the roof equipment will be provided for sure.
Well, it's not based on the parapets then. There would be some other
Sure,
screening.
yeah, there would be additional screening. I know people are affixing it to the units nowadays. It keeps the roof penetrations and leaks down. So we're not sure if they can or can't move the door, but we'll definitely make that recommendation.
I'm not
understand.
saying you have to move it, but I'm saying that the building right now is a very generic building. It could be dropped anywhere in the world and it would look exactly the same way. And that this is a specific site, and it's really almost a corner site. It's a corner in the mall, that you see this from the mall internally, and you see it from the exterior. It's very close to Johnny Cake. It's an elevation that presents itself to the city and to the public way. And that right now, this isn't responsive to any of that. Also, the materials, I know the architectural approval is down the road, but I'm trying to suggest that maybe if we approve the site plan, and then we need to make building changes, or building changes are made, it's going to change the site plan. That's what my concern is.
And keep in mind that you're going to need 4 sides finished material on this building, just by the way it sits on the site.
Yes, we understand.
Okay.
All right, well, that's about all I can say.
So, anything else, Mr. Varga?
That's it.
You out of gas?
I'm out of gas. I got no more.
Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
a comment. I think this goes along with Mr. Varga's comments as well, but I think this might be addressed by the administration. The site plan conditions that you mentioned, as well as the staff report, trying to incorporate additional material and possible entrance, those may affect the site plan conditions that Mr. Varga was speaking of. So if we are actually going to vote on this, are these, in a sense, generic enough that they would still have to comply with all the rest of the items? And even if this site plan that is shown varies slightly, would it be okay for the secondary final submission? Or should we truly table this then?
No, I think the conditions that are noted are generic, for lack of a better word, and enough that they would be applicable.
Right, because for example, they still have to adjust what they're showing here to account for foundation plantings and so forth. So, okay, thank you.
It's my understanding, it was just explained to me that when Barnes and Noble was reviewed and approved, one of the conditions was to have the side of the building that faced Menor Avenue, even though it didn't have the actual entrance, to create that entrance feel. So maybe that's something that the architect can consider on that side, even if it doesn't
Yes,
have the main entrance.
That's
that it
exactly
would-
the kind of response we would need to have, I think. That's a good example, because it's at the other end of this strip of buildings.
And their main entrance is on the interior,
Correct.
facing the ring road, if you will, the road that kind of cuts through.
So it would be the level of architectural response would have to be much greater than what we see here.
So, Mr. Perkovic, did you get an answer to your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Hearing that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion with the 5 conditions.
Second. Yes.
Mr. Kirkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
It's just to be consistent, I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes. Okay, item 10, informal rezoning of 3.51 acres from R4, single-family residential to B2, general business. That table? Or should we move forward with that?
They've requested, that we received a late request at just after 5 today, that
Okay.
they would like to see that tabled
Okay.
until the next meeting.
I'll entertain that motion.
Motion to table?
Second.
Yes, when you're ready.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes. Preliminary site plan of a restaurant at 7827, 7787 Reynolds Road.
This is 11, yeah, okay, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, Steve Franzak, LRC Realty. Again, I brought a prettier picture. We have been working with staff in concert with preparing the final development plans, and we are in agreement to all the preliminary site plan conditions, save one. That being Item 7, the dumpster location shall be relocated to the center parking lot island in the adjacent row with appropriate screening. Today, as designed, we have the trash area located in this area. Representation of this site plan, these 5 trees are existing trees, mature, and include a rather large hedgerow in front of them. And they offer proper existing screening for that trash area, as well as we're adding about 10 arborvitaes around the trash. The recommendation to relocate the trash area occurs in this center end island, which is a little problematic for us because there is an existing storm sewer that runs right down the middle of that area. And we're a little uncomfortable about locating a trash enclosure area with a concrete pad and masonry walls matching the building over that storm sewer. So we would like to keep the trash area where we have designed it, and we can properly screen it. We think it offers a better opportunity to screen it in its presently designed location. And all other site conditions can be met, and we're working through them with staff. And I'd entertain any questions.
Okay. Larry, Kathy, any comment on the dumpster?
I think, you know, we certainly had initial concerns with regard to the back of the dumpster, even though it would be screened facing Tyler Boulevard because of that obvious street exposure. You know, we're not,
But it'll be out of the same material as the building, right?
the screening walls.
Yes, sir.
So you got the screening walls out of the same material as the building, and then you've got the arborvitae and the street trees.
That's correct.
Does that change your thoughts on this? Yeah?
I think that's certainly a good picture of the landscaping there. I guess I'd like to see the landscaping in this.
Well, maybe
We would get that in the,
Maybe Mr. McFarland can do a drive-by.
yeah, and we could get, in the final site plan phase, we would certainly take a closer look at that landscaping and screening as well.
You haven't opened it.
Go right ahead.
I was going to say, how high is the wall for the trash
I
enclosure?
believe it's 6 feet high. Am I correct, David? 6 to 7 feet high?
Okay, can we have an agreement that the plantings that you put in around it are at least half the height of the wall?
Yeah, the arborvitae will be 4-foot height minimum.
Would that be more acceptable to the city's sensitivity on this, if we could guarantee more mature plants at that location?
I was just going to refer to that section of the code that talked about the screening. I think there's a specific height requirement.
It's from the top of the root ball, too, not from the bottom of the root ball.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
the part you see.
right.
Well, I mean, that's the ask to make as a condition that those, at least those plantings would be significantly mature enough to serve their purpose,
We would be in agreement to that.
more so than the minimum requirements.
Yeah, the height, it says the current requirement, which is under 116206, indicates that the height of the plant material at installation shall be equal to or greater than 2/3 of the height of the wall.
Okay, 2/3, so it's 6 feet.
Well, if the wall's 4 feet.
The wall has to be a minimum of 6 feet.
Okay, so
4
then that
feet.
would, 4 feet, yeah. Whatever the height is, just to meet that requirement.
We will meet that requirement.
And with mature trees not, or mature materials not,
Right, not babies.
not saplings.
At installation, it has to meet that height.
At installation, right.
Right.
And spaced equal, close enough to actually
Right.
close the space between the plants.
I'm not sure if you can zoom into the trash area on this plan. We're over here. But again, these are existing trees,
Right,
mature.
right.
There's a hedge in front of them, and then we have the arborvitae here.
Are those on your site, or are they on the,
They're on our site.
okay.
And these will be on a watering system, sprinkler system?
We're trying to work through staff on that. We're not quite sure we're gonna get to the irrigation system, but we will work through that.
There's a requirement that you have to do the irrigation, and it has to be turned on at some point.
That would-
So there's no misunderstanding.
We will work through staff with that. It was not a requirement of the preliminary site plan conditions. I know it was
Right,
talked
I know.
about.
I'm just throwing things out there for you.
Okay. We will work with that.
Okay.
We have to get our tenant to concur with that.
Show them where the spigot is.
Okay. We don't want to run a hose across the drive-through line.
No. Anything else? Mr. Varga?
No, I think, is the additional performance of this landscaping, is that significantly different than what's required to be a condition? I see a no.
Can you say that again?
The discussion we've had about the character of the screening materials around the dumpster, have we defined anything significantly different than what is required
No.
by code?
No.
So we don't need to make it a separate condition? That's what I wanted to know.
Okay.
We offer a quick view of the building elevations. I know this isn't the Architectural Review Board, but masonry materials, Fred can talk a little bit better on that, and just kind of get a hint. Remember what we have there now. We have teal 111 siding and a 2-level building that's coming down, and we think this
We can
is
hardly wait.
a great improvement.
Can I make a comment, just an unofficial comment, since that's an unofficial elevation?
Okay.
When you come west on Tyler, you look right at the back of this building.
Yes.
Just want to point out that this elevation, it's hard to see here, has a low parapet and your dotted-in mechanical units are exposed. I'm just bringing it to your attention that we would want that dealt with, so you don't see those mechanical units from the road on Tyler.
Right, can you talk about that?
Okay. We could connect the items going across because we have pushed those units. Line of sight is probably, because of where these units are placed, you see on the side elevation towards the front of the building, the line of sight coming down that road, my guess is they would probably be next to impossible to see. But that's something we will definitely take a look at.
I would look at that as you approach the site, because it's one of the major adjacent streets, and and you look directly at this back of this building as you approach it. I'll take your word if you can figure it out that it's not going to be seen. My experience is that every time I do that and the building gets built, I see the units, so.
We could certainly perform a sightline study, I mean.
I'm just saying that that's what we want.
We will have
We
that.
don't want to see the mechanical.
We're getting into our detailing right now, and we'll put these guys.
And not from the parking lot.
Not just from the parking lot,
No.
but from Tyler
He's
Boulevard.
talking from Tyler.
I know, I know. As you back down Tyler some distance. Right?
Because you see this building across the parking lot? I mean, you see it quite easily as you come west.
Yes.
Just don't want to see the units, that's all.
Fair enough.
Simple request.
Anything
Just a
else?
preview of the building.
Anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Sidoti.
On your overall site plan map, sheet C 102, you show 21 parking spaces on Bravo's property that's going to be shared. It's labeled as shared parking.
Yes, we will have a reciprocal easement agreement with Bravo for shared parking between the parcels.
Okay.
Not only shared parking, shared access, and if I remember, I mentioned that storm sewer, a storm sewer easement as well for Bravo.
Mr. Zeman, you'll need to see those, correct? So
We
if you could
we will
forward-
have a draft of those ready for
Okay.
final approval.
Mr. Chairman, along the same, well, are you not done
Just
finishing?
one
Please
more.
finish.
To create or establish these 21 spaces, when I went out there along the south wall of Bravo, you've got 5 spaces that says pickup, for pickup. And then there's a door on the south wall that says to go.
Right.
Then there's extensive landscaping with a concrete sidewalk through it that takes you back to the dumpster area. To create these 21 spaces, you have to rip out all that landscaping
Larry, could you focus in on this a little bit more?
and that sidewalk to create the 21 contiguous spaces.
Joseph, you are absolutely correct. Today, and if you follow my finger, there's a curb here, and then the curb jets out.
Right.
And then comes back here. All of this will be removed, and the new curb comes in here.
Right.
Creating a free-flowing drive aisle all the way out to the entrance.
I figured that when I
Yeah.
saw it. Okay.
Yeah, so, right, there's some substantial mature landscaping to that
There
side.
is.
There is a door
It's
over
quite
there.
nice.
Yeah, so there will be some removal there, but I think in concert with the improvement of the drive aisle, considering the drive-through traffic and the volume of traffic that Starbucks will create, this is much better.
Have you agreed with the administration on the additional entrance to be put along the south wall of Starbucks? You talked about an additional door, correct?
I was just going to raise that point again. It wasn't listed as a condition. It was a recommendation for consideration within the analysis. It's on the second page of the analysis. We were concerned because the main entrance to the building is where a lot of traffic will be coming in and out of the site. And the thought was, well, maybe that could be kept. Could there be another consideration for an additional entrance on the south side of the building there, and even consider moving the handicap parking spaces to that side of the building? Again, it was just something to consider. We were just concerned with all of that traffic coming in and out at the front with all of the cars coming up in the front aisle.
We will consider that with our tenant, Starbucks. The only difficulty I see is putting the handicap over there. They might have to walk in between the cars in the drive-through lane.
Well, of course, you gotta take a look at that. You don't wanna create
We will,
that problem.
we'll ask our tenant to consider that.
As far as the additional door goes, if you look at the Starbucks up on Chillicothe and Menor, the additional door on the side of their building, on the east side, it works well. They got two doors, front and side.
I have seen Starbucks do that before, and we'll
Yeah.
bring that to their attention.
All right.
We also don't have the depth on that south side to get the adequate ramping for the sidewalk. We'd have to do something special there
We
in order
could-
to make that work.
We could certainly move some curves if we had to, closer to. We're trying to, you know, Ron Traub I have known for years, and we met with him before he retired. And we talked about a number of things which we incorporated in the plan. And one was, we have an extended lawn area here now. It's probably 15 feet wider than it currently exists. And we're trying to do something real nice on this corner. Right. There was a discussion with what your line of sight to the back of the building here. Well, we're also concerned with the line of sight as you travel north on Reynolds and what this is going to look like. So this will be an enhanced area. To your point, we don't have enough room for ramps if we put the handicap over here. Maybe we leave the handicap here and then put the door in. We'll be fine. If we need to put the door here with handicap, as Kathy mentioned, perhaps we can move this curb down and create enough room for a ramp. There's a few things that we can do.
Thank you.
We'll bring those to our tenants' attention.
Mr. Chairman,
Right ahead.
I've eaten at Bravo's, especially on a Saturday night, Friday night. Their parking lot is completely filled. Now they're sharing some of these spaces with you. I think they're going to be using your spaces because the demand for space is quite, I mean, is this really going to be a useful sharing? Really? I mean, a lot of times we do this and it's not usually a problem that you can share, there's enough overall parking spaces. But I've been here when there's no parking spaces.
I would offer, and Kathy might be able to help me with this, that Starbucks is a morning place. Everybody's getting their coffee in the morning. Bravo is a lunch and dinner kind of place. So I think there's provisions in your Menor Planning Commission for shared parking if the uses and the timing of the uses are similar.
Kathy, is that a reasonable assumption here?
Yes.
Okay, I accept that, thank you.
Anything else? I'll entertain a motion.
Modify the item 7 condition, since that asked for the relocation of the dumpster.
And you know the code, so you'll agree to the height of the arborvitae and such.
We'll make that trash area look like the Taj Mahal.
Okay.
So you're eliminating
Let's
7.
talk about the fountains.
Revise.
Revise it.
Right.
So I'll make the motion with 7 conditions.
Second.
When you're ready.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero? Mr. Snow?
Yes.
Thank you.
Much. We look forward to the final approval.
Okay, item 12 will table. I need a motion to table it.
Motion to table item 12.
Second.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic? Yes. Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes. Final subdivision is 17 residential lots at 9120, 9152 Jackson Street. Welcome back.
Evening. Greg Summers, Summers Real Estate Group. We're here this evening to request final approval for Creekside Farm subdivision. We've worked with the administration to address all concerns to date. We also put together a comprehensive color plan and detailed landscape plan. I do want to point out that we did detail the recreation features in this corridor that we'd previously discussed. The picnic pavilion area. We made it specific on the landscape plan just so that's addressed. And we also did show the future park access trail if that ever comes to fruition, so it's there. I know that that was still an item to be determined depending on the park plans and such. But we also made the tree buffer clear on the plans and opened any questions.
Kathy, any comments from the administration?
None, Mr. Chairman, other than the conditions noted.
Commissioners?
Fine with the conditions in the staff report.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? Mr. Varga, any questions? I mean, you're our go-to guy on RVG.
We'll talk about that later. I know there's some other discussions that other folks want to have. The local service drainage easement, those elements, is that temporary ponding? Is that what that means? That's above the creek elevation?
Here?
Yeah. Yes, there, and then it also runs behind the units down to the west. There's also more of that. There's 2 more basins.
Yes.
Are those, what's the depth of the water that may accumulate before it spills?
That I'd have to verify with our engineers, to be completely honest with you.
The reason I bring it up is so close, these are so close to the houses and the lots, that I'm interested about the safety aspect of, a couple feet of water within, practically the property line of the parcels. And whether that suggests any safety issue. Do we have to put some kind of fence around this, or is it all right?
I don't believe those basins are designed to hold standing water. We have very, very sandy soil conditions there.
Well, they're clearly sized to hold runoff before it goes into the creek, right?
I meant permanently on a normal basis.
My concern is just, even for a short term, how deep does the water get in those basins that are that close to those parcels? It's not like it's over in the corner someplace, it's literally feet, 2 steps off the property and you're in the basin.
I don't know the exact depths of the basins.
Can we get any information from the city on that?
Well, I mean, just based on the elevations that are provided, it's fairly shallow. I mean, from the top of the basin, we're showing a line of 667, and it goes down to 665?
And the one, yeah.
So that would be 2 feet at the middle?
And then the second one is also,
669 and 667.
yeah, 2 feet as well.
About 2 feet.
Yeah.
And the time of drainage, where they would go from being 2 feet deep to empty, is any calculation on that? The reason I'm bringing it up is, does it have to be separated from the properties with some kind of fence or for safety reasons?
I believe that the engineer's office would have recommended that.
Okay, well, it's, my sensitivity is because they're so close to the property. In many cases, it's off in the corner, it's some distance away. It's literally 2 steps off the property or the parcel line, and you're into the water. Have I brought up a issue?
I don't know. I don't think the engineer had any comment, did he?
Yeah, no.
No, I mean, they're not severe elevations, and we had pretty detailed conversations. We had to add those additional areas just for very temporary sediment and holding water and heavy rain events, but they're not extreme or deep water features where you're going to have deep water. Like I said, it's a really sandy soil, but we did need some additional areas that could hold water if need be.
It was more a question, not just to you, but to the city, as to whether we need any protection relative to safety. That's all. That was my observation.
Understood.
Is this something we want to check on later?
No, again, I'm looking at reviewing the engineer's comments, and I'm not seeing a comment of concern with with regard to that point.
Yeah, but that may not mean that it doesn't exist. It just means he did comment on it.
So you're recommending that we check with the engineer? Is that what you're recommending?
I guess, just to have him, yeah, it doesn't have to hold up what
I'd be
we're
fine
doing
to
here.
make it, if, I'd be fine on record if there was a safety concern of some sort and they wanted a fence, we'd be fine with that. We're amenable to
Right, then,
whatever's
then
reasonable.
let's just leave it at this then. Just between us, pass that past the engineer again, just to take a look at it relative to a safety issue and the proximity to the site, to see if he has any other thoughts.
I'll check with our engineer as well.
Okay? It doesn't have to be a condition, it's an observation that I was sensitive to. Thank you.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sidoti?
at our May 3rd meeting, when we were discussing this, Mr. Cicero, you raised the observation that we didn't like the way some of these houses were like bunched together and how they were situated. Are you more comfortable now looking at this particular?
I guess I'm slightly more comfortable. I'm still not comfortable with plot 17 and how it butts up so close to 16 and 15. It almost feels like 17 is unnecessary.
It sort of jumps out. I noticed that too.
The remainder and around the cul-de-sac area looks better to me. But 17's the one I just have the biggest issue with.
And the other issue that Mr. Vargo raised was we didn't want to have any cars hanging out on the sidewalk. And it looks like most of that's been accounted for with these driveways, except 7, 8, and 9 look short, but it's still enough pavement there where those cars won't be on the back end of the cars won't be on the sidewalks, will they?
No, they won't. And we made sure that you could at least double load it with plenty of space and still have garage spaces as well. So 2 on the driveway and 2 in the garage.
Okay. Those were just a couple issues, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
What's your thoughts on 17? Can it be eliminated? Can it be moved to create a little more?
You know, this is a tight site, and we worked with the administration and our land planners as best as possible to stagger the units. You know, we've done other communities in the city, and we don't ever try to just jam units in.
Right.
We're conscious about how we design our communities, but we really need to have that unit to make this work. And you know, we plan on doing some landscape features and tried to stagger it as best as possible. And you know, again, it's a tight site, but we did our best to accommodate the site conditions being as tight as they are.
Now, I think you created the available space around the curves that we talked about last time.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with 6 conditions stated in the report.
I'll second.
Yes, when you're ready.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes?
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 14, architectural review, reimaging of a commercial building at 8840 Menor Avenue.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good night.
My name is Steve Walker, and I'm with Viper Construction Group.
And the reason for the extra green trim is what?
I feel, I guess, to bring people when they're driving down Menor Avenue.
So the sign itself doesn't accommodate that. Okay. Any comments from the administration?
No, Mr. Chairman, well, other than the fact that we felt that the new sign is up. And,
Right.
and just in viewing it from Menor Avenue, it seemed, quite visible, readable. Our only concern with the green striping was that the rest of the storefront facade, on that portion of the retail area and also the one that's perpendicular to this, it had very subtle signage. And so we didn't want to detract from anything else that was in there and keep the tones on the subtle side. I've seen the Dollar Trees at other locations without the green striping, and again, it's quite
And it-
visible.
And it works. Okay. Commissioners, any comments, questions?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say I agree with Ms. Mitchell. I don't think you can just put a green stripe on Dollar Tree and ignore the rest of the retail building going all the way down to the restaurant. I think there just needs to be a more comprehensive re-imaging of that entire retail unit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My comment is I think we need to dump the strips, the green strips. Leave the signage, it's huge. You can read it from far away, from Manor Avenue. The green strips are not necessary, in my opinion.
Okay. Is that a motion?
My motion to approve with the exception of the green stripes.
I'll second.
Well, it needs to be a positive motion.
Yeah.
So we're moving to approve with the green stripes, and then if you don't want to do that, then you vote against it.
Right, the green stripes really are the reimaging request. The sign's already up, but that's obviously a sign code issue.
So that's all we're talking about is the green stripes?
The sign's up. There's also signage on a freestanding pylon sign out front as well. So the complete sign package that they'd be permitted is up.
Okay.
So then,
The question is the green
Motion-
striping as an additional as an architectural change to the exterior elevation.
so my motion is to
Approve it.
approve it as proposed.
Right.
Right.
I'll second.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
No.
Mr. Sidoti?
No.
Mr. Tiedemann?
No.
Mr. Varga?
No.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
No. Finding of facts, Joe?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Mr. Perkovic?
I don't believe the green stripe adds anything to the existing storefronts that are cohesive as they are.
Mr. Sidoti?
Like I stated earlier, you just can't put the green stripe and look at the Dollar Tree. You got to do a comprehensive re-imaging of the entire building.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Same thing, green stripe on just that part of the shopping center just would not look right.
Mr. Varga?
As an architectural element, I don't believe it promotes anything additional to the signage.
Mr. Snow?
I would agree with the previous comments, and I would also add that, the green stripe in and of itself does not add anything to the building. So that's the reason for the no vote. So, no.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 15 is tabled. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I entertain a motion to table it.
Motion to table number item 15 at tonight's agenda.
Second.
Yes, when you're ready.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero? Mr. Snow?
Yes. Item 16.
Chairman, thank you again. Mr. Christian, thanks again. Representing Steris Corporation. You'll all be familiar with this. The city manager used that as part of his presentation earlier this year for the state of the city.
You notice the building is upside down?
Well, we'll fix that.
Because we can't approve an upside-down building.
We do architectural element. Slide this up here. So actually, the city of Mentor introduced this proposed addition for Steris Corporation earlier this year. I'm sure you're all familiar with the site. This is Steris's corporate headquarters, U.S. corporate headquarters. This is in addition to their original building, which was a building first built and occupied by Caterpillar. Steris Corporation took it over in approximately 1995 and has since purchased nearly every property that you see on this map here. Not all of them. and has expanded several times. The last major addition was here, which was their Customer Solutions Center, which is where they bring folks in from all over the world to see all of their products. It is also the home of their call center. The addition that we're talking about would occur approximately here in a portion of their existing parking lot. It's actually a delivery drop-off area. We're proposing approximately a 17,000 square foot floor plate. So the official square footage is between 33 and 34,000 square feet on the 2 floors. Steeris would like to keep the character of the original building, bring in a lot of glass, natural light, give a better environment for their employees to work in. They will create 250 new seats by doing this. This would be the first phase of a multi-phase renovation to where they get into the old building and renovate the interior of that once this facility is up and occupied. It'll be approximately a 2-year process. We've read through the comments. I did talk to the staff about parking. There was a concern that we were losing 30 spaces, but as you can see from this document, we have approximately 1,235 spaces on this complete campus, and that would go down to 1,205. As we move along and readdress the site, we'll probably be able to recover at least 30 spaces at that time. So that's a work in process. With respect to landscaping and irrigation, the complete campus is equipped with irrigation. We are impacting this strip of trees here right now, but that will be re-landscaped, and at that time, before we finish, we'll bring in a landscape plan. We will also be landscaping around the new building, and that plan is being developed now, so we'll bring that in at a later date prior to submittal of the engineered documents for permit review. I've spoken to Inspector Scott from the fire department with respect to the requested fire hydrant. There are fire hydrants existing all over the campus. His concern was at the time that we'd be outside of the distance of the 200 feet that's required, 250 feet that's required currently. We are verifying that, and if we are outside of that spec, then we will add one. We are going to bring him out to the site and look at that, and if we have sufficient and get his approval, then we would not add one, if that's okay to alter your stipulation to allow for that. But certainly if we're
Kathy,
outside.
that's okay, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, also, there is a stipulation to add screening on the roof. You cannot see this building anywhere from Heisley or from the highway. In fact, these are all 2-story buildings with multiple rooftop units, and they are not visible at this point in time, so we would really not like to add the additional structure up there for those
Varga, any
screens.
comments?
Proof is in the pudding. Yeah,
Don't see 'em now.
you're telling me you don't see it. That's the only concern that requirement is that you don't see it.
You don't
From
see it.
adjacent properties or from adjacent roadways. You feel confident?
You would not see this from
that
Heisley
You
Road.
would not see this, well,
From
not
Route
from
2.
Heisley, what about Route 2?
No.
No?
Progress.
In fact, there's Customer Solutions Center here has 6 units on it, and it would be right next to that. None of you
Okay,
have ever
I
seen
mean,
any of this.
that's the requirement, is that you shield it if it's seen. So
Right.
if for some unanticipated reality takes place where all of a sudden, for some reason you do see it, would you be?
We'll correct that.
Will be corrected, that's fine.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, the building is very attractive. I think it's going to work in your campus.
We appreciate that very
Properly.
much. We'll welcome all of you to visit when it's open.
Is that a motion, Mr. Varga?
Motion to accept, yeah. I didn't see how many conditions associated with this, any?
3?
3 conditions?
4.
Okay, motion to approve with 4 conditions.
Second.
Tony, you're on student standby for a second.
The comments, yes, absolutely. We will comply.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Steris Corporation appreciates that. I appreciate that. We look forward to having you all out soon.
Got the ribbon?
Yes. Ribbon.
Kathy, anything under the director's report?
The only thing I was going to throw out there is the fact that the staff has been working on modifying the staff report. The template of the staff report for a number of reasons. We were going to share that with you after we've tweaked it. The idea is that, as you know, these can be rather lengthy. And when you have 16 items on the agenda, it can be tough to prepare all this information in the time frame that we have. And we thought that just from a readability standpoint and again, in preparation, for our benefit in how we prepare the reports, we were going to try to consolidate some of this information so that it's less in book form and more in
User-friendly.
tabulation.
User-friendly.
Yeah, bullet form. So when we have a draft, we'd like to share it with you so that you guys can give us some feedback. Again, just from your standpoint as the readers of it, if you like it. But I just wanted you to be aware we were working on it, and we'll have something soon.
Could I ask a question or make a proposal? I think I can do this. I know you've been looking at RVG zoning and thinking about definitions and the requirements for that. I'd like to propose a work session between some of the commissioners and your folks to share some ideas and to maybe further develop the RVG zoning definition. I think, and I'm speaking for myself, but I think others might agree to this, is that some of the outcomes we're getting with RVG isn't exactly what we would like, or we might expect something more than that. And they're basically just working to the requirements, and they interpret it the way they interpret it, and we would like to maybe see something different or better or more. Can we have some kind of session to maybe share ideas and try to move forward so that we can maybe come to a point where we can define this the way we'd all be more happy with it? Is that a doable thing?
I think so. I like that idea. We'll poll the commission, see when we can get together and do it.
I mean, I don't mean to impose on your process, but
Well, and just to let you know, we're still working on the PUD review. That has been moving forward. We hope to have another work session with council next month on that. So.
all right. Well, I mean, again, some of this is these things come up and we kind of struggle back and forth between the
I
developers.
think we'd like to do it before there are no more RVGs planned.
Yeah, as soon as possible, but within your working schedule.
Anything else for the good of the cause?
No, I think that's it.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.